This is Ian Scott Cohen, your performance coach, back with another video as a part of our Imposter Syndrome series, where we're trying to deconstruct, understand, and overcome the imposter phenomenon, or these consistent feelings of self-doubt, fear of being exposed, and overall deflecting our own successes. So today's video is focused on the workplace. This is ground zero for most of us and our feelings of inadequacy that turn into the imposter phenomenon. We're going to look in this video at 4 different scenarios or instances that oftentimes sow the seeds of what will turn into imposter syndrome at work. So we're going to focus on evaluation, when someone's getting feedback, issues around participation, and the 4th and final one, which you may not think about, is when you actually receive praise. And then we're going to leave you with a quick tip about how to start overcoming these feelings. So let's start with periods of evaluation. This is naturally the most common and recurring place where imposter feelings and the imposter phenomenon can come up for folks, because you're literally being evaluated. Someone is looking at you and your accomplishments and trying to give you some sort of semblance of, here's what we think of you, here's how you've done. And so in order to really be proactive about avoiding this as a tripwire for your imposter feelings, I always stress to my clients that you should externalize the goals. Make sure you push your manager, your boss, your team to be very clear about what success looks like for your role, for the team, and that needs to be quantified when possible. So actually having numbers that you guys can measure up against, and qualified too. Having people each describe what success looks like, what hard work looks like. This is a really key component of developing really great working relationships, because it helps you build an understanding of each other and your perspectives about work. So evaluation is the first place where a lot of people get nervous and start having these imposter feelings come up. But if you externalize the goals, that can actually really help in assuaging some of those feelings and getting everybody focused on what's important, which is achieving the goals of the business. Okay, next up, we've got feedback. So similar to evaluation, this is when someone's actually assessing your performance or even a specific project or task you just completed. And naturally, this is where a lot of imposter feelings can arise as well. And so there's a huge trend amongst management to try to go with a sandwich message of feedback, a positive comment, then a negative one, then a positive one. The research is actually mixed on this. It shows that if you actually just lead with all of the positives and then eventually get to the negatives at the end, or the things that somebody needs to improve on, that actually might be superior. And so in general, when you're receiving feedback, just know that this is really about you getting better at achieving your own goals. A lot of times we focus too much on perceptions that other people have of us as opposed to what we're trying to accomplish for ourselves. So that's the quickest way to start helping yourself deal with getting feedback and then overcoming it to allow it to give you energy versus shut you down and be discouraging. And for our managers, it's always better to be authentic and open and honest. Lead with the strengths. These are the things you've done great. I would love to see more of this. And watch your words when you give those areas for improvement. You really want to focus on things that are changeable, things that can be improved upon, and not that are permanent or pervasive or make someone feel like they have inherent issues that they ultimately won't be able to overcome to be successful. That's when you get into situations where imposter phenomenon can take over and the person feels like crap. So feedback, second common area where a lot of times imposter feelings tend to crop up. Okay, the third area or instance I want to talk about in the workplace for imposter phenomenon is really around issues of participation. Now, this is where implicit bias can come into play, and even the managers oftentimes don't realize, hence the implicit part, that they're doing things that give off the wrong signals to the rest of their team. So an obvious example are in meetings where maybe a white male is leading the meeting and they tend to only call on people who look like them, or white males like myself tend to be more confident in their ability to participate and they dominate conversations and discussions. Another instance would be where a project is happening and you see that the boss or the manager or leader tends to only go to certain people for input, even if it's informal. All of these little things can send signals to the rest of us that we are not worthy of giving input, or they're not actually valuing our participation or our contributions. And so as managers, you really have to watch out and be careful about how you seek input and how you seek participation. And if you're someone on the receiving end of being excluded, there are a lot of ways to try to voice that in a professional manner, but most of all, it's about how can you add value and make sure that your value is known. Sometimes that means advocating for yourself. Okay, the last instance where imposter phenomenon feelings oftentimes come up, but we don't really think about it, is when we receive recognition or praise. So for instance, if I gave a really great presentation, or I was the sales leader for my quarter, and our leadership team or managers come in and they express surprise. They're like, wow, I really didn't think that you were going to be able to do that, or that was way better than I thought it was going to be. Those types of reactions can actually make us feel less confident, right? It's because it shows you that the manager or leader's expectations were actually lower than what you've had for yourself. And honestly, it tends to be a good growth exercise as a team so that you guys can get those expectations closer together. But for my managers and leaders out there, just be aware that your words really do matter. And so if you want someone to reach for high expectations, then have high expectations for them. And so if they do a really impressive job, you can say, wow, I'm really impressed, exactly as I expected to be, right? Like that's why you hired that person. And so be very careful when you receive praise or you're giving praise, because the way you do it should try to make the person feel like you always expected them to do this well. And if you truly didn't, or you know that they worked really hard to overcome a previous area that they need to improve, then you can recognize them for that. At the end of the day, authenticity and vulnerability is key, but praise is something that oftentimes doesn't get talked about when we're talking about imposter syndrome. So I wanted to make sure we mentioned it. Okay, so now that we've gone through 4 common instances of imposter syndrome being tripped or triggered at work, talking about evaluation, feedback, issues around participation, and finally issues with praise, I wanted to leave you with a couple of thoughts that can help you start overcoming some of these challenges. The first is the idea of control. So there's a lot of research that shows when we focus on things outside of our control, that is when we get most angry and frustrated. Now, imposter syndrome, a lot of it stems from what we think other people think about us or their perceptions of us. Do they think I'm smart? Do they think I'm funny? Do they think I'm attractive? Do they think I'm capable of doing this job? And so all of those things are outside of your control. You cannot control what other people think about you or what kind of perspectives they're bringing to the table. So instead, focus on what you can control, which is your level of effort, your questions, your seeking feedback and reaching out for improvement, all those kinds of things that can actually help you get closer to your goals as opposed to trying to impress everybody else, which is never going to end up giving you what you want because it's a never-ending goal or thing to strive for. The second thing I'm going to borrow from acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, which is really thinking about our thoughts, not in terms of are they true or not true, but are they helpful or unhelpful? And so if a thought is helpful, then you want to keep thinking. If it's unhelpful, you want to toss it. A lot of us think things about ourselves like, oh, I'm really lazy, I didn't work out today. And then you think, well, am I lazy? Maybe I am really lazy. Is that true or not true? It doesn't really matter. Thoughts come and go. We have 6,000 of them every single day. And so instead, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, is that thought helpful? Is it helping me get closer to my goals, getting closer to the person I want to be? Or is it unhelpful? And it's actually just making me feel like crap, and it's getting me farther away from being a confident, self-assured, and accomplished human being, which is ultimately what I want. And so when you're thinking about starting to overcome your imposter feelings, think about, am I focused on things I can control or things I can't? And are my thoughts helpful or are they unhelpful? This has been another video in our imposter syndrome series. This one focused on 4 different scenarios in the workplace. Please like and subscribe if you find this content valuable, and definitely leave a comment if you have anything to share or if this resonates with you. Until next time, I hope you feel great and are getting the most out of your life, and we'll see you next time. This is Ian Scott Cohen. Thank you for watching.